Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, debt slaves, tourists, prisons, vessels, debt slaves, debt slaves, debt slaves, debt slaves. I'm a useful idiot, and today I want to talk about the fact that the National Consumer Law Center came out with a report recently, and they are the ones that have been watching the money brought in by banks, specifically fees. And in this new report, it turns out that in 2011 alone, banks made $29.5 billion in overdraft fees. And that figure rose to $32 billion in 2012. So those are staggering figures, because let's remember the average fee for a overdraft is $35, and it ranges anywhere from $28 to $42, and the actual cost of processing is a few cents. I've heard the figure of 62 cents. So that means the entire fee is all pure profit for the bank. And it's also no accident that the median debit card overdraft is only $20, while the median amount for all overdrawn transactions is $36. This fee is larger than the overdraft on purpose. And of course, we also know that the banks use are exploiting troubled accounts by extending overdraft to debit and ATM transactions too. And that way, all transactions are put through and the fees pile up. Sometimes with the client's knowledge, and sometimes not, because they wouldn't know unless it got declined. And of course, one of their favorite methods is to reorder checks, to make sure that the checks come in, they pile them up, and then put the largest one through first. And the company line, as usual, is these are the services that their clients demand. But so they legitimize putting through the largest one because they assume that one's the most important. But of course, they know full well that these fees cascade into massive overdrafts that begin as a potentially small overdraft, but by reordering the checks, they cause them to cascade into a disaster. And they say that they don't make much money off of these accounts. It's really not worth it to them to have these accounts, although it's interesting that all the big banks are certainly interested in continuing to get involved in this clientele. Chase Manhattan, J.P. Morgan being a notable example. They bought out all those banks from WAMU, and they've branched out all over. So they're interested in these retail accounts. And they justify this exploitation of these low accounts by these fees. And because this is an interesting phenomenon, because if you look at the details, who is paying this? It's the working poor mostly, and the lower working class, and they are being exploited because this is a malady that only affects them. Having overdraft, certain levels of society certainly don't ever have to deal with anything like that. There's so much in their accounts, but for 40 to 50% of Americans, I think at this point, who are living paycheck to paycheck, I'm certain probably the figure is probably higher than that. But for those people living paycheck to paycheck, then this is a phenomenon they deal with all the time. And I think it's pointed to look at it more in the context of the fact that it's another mechanism to exploit their customers. So banks have all these fraud and corruption that they use at different levels of their banks to exploit their institutional clients, and then all the way down at the bottom, the retail clients. And they make a killing, as they always do, because it's all about maximum continuous extraction. And that's what they have. We have a society of debt slaves living paycheck to paycheck that pay these overdraft fees as a cost of doing business, and a very heavy cost of doing business it is at that rate. So the tune that banks are up to $32 billion a year in overdraft fees on the working poor. Another tax. This is just another tax, but it's levied by a corporation. And there's been talk of roping this in over the years, but of course it's never done. In fact, the fees have been going up. And when you factor this in, particularly since it's all profit, there's no overhead involved at all in collection of these. It's a staggering amount of money. But then extrapolate the fact that I know by figures that I quoted before that they've been averaging $20 billion year after year after year for at least 10 or 15, probably 20 years from overdraft fees and overdraft accounts. So now that it covers everything, they've found it to be a great profit machine. And so for them to say, for the banks to say that they don't make money off of these low balance retail accounts is pretty misleading, because as a matter of fact, they're just a little money hose, a little money vacuum the bank hooks up, extracting these fees. And I'm not excusing any irresponsibility by customers, but it certainly his fee has not served as a disincentive to not overdraft your account, and instead the banks are going to exploit it and actually exacerbate the personal problems and financial problems of millions as these things cascade. So here's a simple everyday thing about finance and money and banks and transactions that everyone takes for granted, but it's actually a very small symbol of a very big issue, and that is the banks exploiting and extracting wealth from every source in a constant, maximum, consistent extraction stream. And bank fees are part of that. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.